So Nosferatu or Nosferatu, we were just debating the pronunciation. I don't know, but I think it's widely regarded as the first feature-length horror film. So I actually did a little bit of research before this and found that I guess the first horror film ever, which was like a 6 minute long thing, is a French movie. And I think the translation of the title is like The House of the Devil, but it's only like 6 minutes long, and it came out in like 1896 or something like that.
Cool.
So before this, but I think this is the first like hour plus one that's kind of
Yeah.
widely recognized. And I can say with confidence, this is the first silent film that I've sat through from start to finish. Like I've seen some silent stuff here and there, but I've never actually watched a full length silent film ever until now. Is this the first one you've seen like this? Or
No, I saw this in college as part of one of my film studies classes, and we also watched. And then I did a modern culture and media class, and we started pretty in the past to get to modern, and we watched a couple silent films, I think, in
yeah,
that class. So I had seen this one plus maybe a couple others. So it wasn't my first, but and I still feel like I was of an age in college where like I mean we had cell phones, but they only were for phones. Like it wasn't you didn't do anything else on a cell phone.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
very
yeah,
vividly remember that.
yeah, yeah. And so I didn't feel the need to like check my phone throughout the movie, which is what I was very much doing during this rewatch was like a lot of other things. It's very hard now in 2024 to keep your attention for an hour and 28 minutes on a silent film, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And we were talking about this. Like, I really made a conscious effort to try and pay as much attention to the movie as I could, which is
Yeah.
not to say that when I'm watching a more modern movie, I'm not paying attention. But I think the lack of verbal dialogue, for whatever
Mhm.
reason, and just other sound effects, like it was a challenge. And I realized that if I had my laptop open or I was looking at my phone, I was missing chunks of what was going on because I think sometimes you can get used to just hearing dialogue and kind of knowing,
Yeah.
while you're doing other things, like what's happening in a movie. But
Yeah.
um, I wouldn't say that it was a chore to get through, but it definitely took a little more effort than I would have
Yes.
anticipated.
I mean,
Which is
it
not to
took me
say,
3 sittings basically. I
yeah.
broke it up into like 3 different times I tried to sit down and do it.
Oh, I started watching it. It was like 5 p.m., which was probably the worst time to start it, like on a
Yeah.
weeknight, right after we had like kind of eaten an early dinner and all that. But then the kids were trying to get homework finished, and I had to pause it like 4 times to like help
Yeah.
with stuff going on. But I did get through it. And what I wanted to do as far as a review is concerned, or I think what we wanted to do is talk about it from just, as a movie, like, is it a good movie? Because it's
Yeah.
sort of looked at as being ground zero. That's one of the terms that I've seen for horror as a genre, at least in the modern sense. And, does it hold up 100 years later, right? Or however long it's been, 102 years? I guess
Yeah.
102 years. It was
Yeah.
1922 when it came out, right? And it's a German movie. I was telling him I picked up the Blu-ray, which has the German version with the subtitles, but of course I watched the English translation because I would have been completely lost had I watched the German. I do have an aunt who is fluent in German because she lived in Germany for a while, but I certainly would have no idea what was
No,
going on
I
if
would
I
not
if
either.
I
No.
yeah.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
So I guess let's just start with our initial response to it. Would you say that it's a good movie? Just generally
Yes.
speaking.
Yes, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
I would even say it's a great movie as far as like film is concerned. Whether we could call it like an entertaining movie in 2024, that's like I almost feel like it's irrelevant. Like I think that when I mean, I don't know, because I don't think you couldn't make the exact same film today, but I think a lot of what they were doing in 1922, I assume, I wasn't there, was probably very groundbreaking. And like the story is strong. I think the pace is strong. I think there's a lot of cinematic elements that work really well. So I do think it's a great film for when it was made. I understand why it's a ground zero horror film.
That's my thing. I think when you look at it within the context of it basically setting the stage for pretty much everything that we think of as modern horror, like it's an excellent movie in that regard.
Yeah.
If I don't know, when you take it on its own, I would say it's good, but maybe not amazing. It like if you take away the context and you just sort of look at it, and I think the thing that makes it tough for me is having seen so many different iterations of the Dracula story, which that's what this is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's the Dracula story. We've seen so many different versions of that. I think my favorite still is probably Bram Stoker's Dracula, the one with Gary Oldman,
I
Keanu
have seen
Reeves.
that. It's been a while.
That one's probably my favorite, which is like super gothic type of horror.
I was
But
in
yeah,
Dracula. Did I ever tell you that?
you
We
were in
did
Dracula.
we did a stage version, and I was Van Helsing.
Oh, nice.
I won
That's
a little
awesome. I did not
award.
know that. Was that like somewhat recently or a while back?
No, I was a senior in high school.
Okay, so that's been a long, so not quite recently. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it
Well,
was a while
so
ago.
to your point about the groundbreaking nature of this, I think among other things, the thing that I was impressed by had to do, at least in part, with the special effects, right? I mean, this is one
Yeah.
of the kind of early attempts at having special effects. You've got certain scenes where the Dracula character Nosferatu is like rising out of his coffin, and you get sort of that like it's almost like stop motion the way that they kind of do it with like different frames moving
Yeah,
up.
it absolutely is stop motion, but it's more fluid than it probably I mean, it is. For the time for 1922, it was extremely well done. And I also think what's interesting is every shot is a still shot. Like there's no panning or tilting, there's no camera movement. So one of the things that I paid attention to this time watching it was how much I felt like that impacted is if you can't tilt or pan, especially in horror, where I feel like
Mhm.
so much of the jump scares or the reveals that we do are because we tilt or we pan or we do something and suddenly something's there. And we can't do any of that in Nosferatu. And so I do think the way that they use the still frame with the stop motion and the shadows, I think makes up for that. I didn't miss it. I didn't feel like it needed it, which is what I was kind of trying to evaluate.
Well, and one thing I had read about the movie before seeing it was just how, I guess, because it's a silent film, how much expression had to be used on the part of the actors to try and get the point across. And,
Whole
I would,
body acting is what I
I was
wrote in
about to
my
say,
notes.
like,
Whole
it
body
ver-
acting.
I think from today's point of view, it verges on being over the top, but it had to be
Oh
that
yeah.
way, right? It had to be
Oh,
that
it did.
way, yeah,
Yes.
to get the point across when you've got just intermittent, title cards to explain what the action is, what people are saying, and all of that. But at times it was kind of comical. And there was one moment I know when I was watching it that I texted you, and I was like, there's a moment in this movie that I was basically laughing out loud because of just how ridiculous a certain section looked. But I'm just curious if it was the same. Was there any part of this where you were like, this is comically like kind of crazy? I'm just curious.
I wouldn't say there was any part that I felt like was comically crazy, but there were two parts that I wrote down with title cards that I was like, that dialogue not being delivered and in 2024, I think would cause people to laugh. Like, your wife has a lovely neck was a part that I was like, okay, that's funny. And when they told the girl that she just had a mild case of blood congestion, and I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah, right. Like that verbiage from like the early 20th century, I guess, or
I'm like,
whatever.
"Oh, what do you really mean by that, Doctor Sir?"
Right.
But so
Right.
those, but what was the part that you laughed out loud?
So there was the moment in the movie where the ship arrives, right? So he's coming from his
Yeah.
country, and he gets out of the ship and he's carrying his coffin, and it's literally like this dude just sort of waddling around town carrying the coffin under one arm. Like I, for some reason, that was just hilarious to me. Just the
So
imagery of
I
that.
didn't find it funny. I I literally wrote, I like him carrying his own coffin. He is a self-reliant vampire. Like he packed his own carriage. He got in by himself. He is a self-independent vampire, and I appreciate that. I guess I didn't find it funny. I could see why you would think it was comical. I just liked it. For me, it stood out as being so different than
Right. I
what
mean,
we
it wasn't supposed to be funny, but I
know,
think
but
I
I
think
get
it was
it.
just. And I've mentioned before the movie Dark City, which I don't know if you have. I don't think you've seen that one, right?
No, but
Like
I know you've mentioned it.
there are the characters in that, like the villains, quote unquote, look like Nosferatu, and I think it's very much a
Okay.
clear play on sort of his imagery. But he is a creepy looking figure in this movie.
Oh,
There's
heck
sort of
yeah.
an understated nature of it, and I mean, and when we talk about things being comical, I do think when Hutter arrives, and the whole thing is like he's Nosferatu is going to buy a house or buy some real
Yeah.
estate and move, and they're having this dinner conversation, and you just look at this dude, and he looks just so complete. It looks like Uncle Fester, essentially, just like
Yes.
so way over the
Yes.
top.
And I was thinking about it, and what I would say quite honestly, I think I like this interpretation better than like a Bram Stoker Dracula interpretation because he's not attractive. He's not a charmer. I haven't, I don't like the interpretation of Dracula as this like debonair,
Like,
charming
ladies are, like,
guy.
attracted to him, they can't resist him
Yeah,
kinda
I
thing.
I have never been about that, and so I did like that he was very clearly a creeper from the moment that you meet him. And what I really liked, so you have the Knock character who sort of becomes this like Renfield character, he's eating the bugs and he's like the master, and he's been locked up. But what I loved in this version, which I don't see, I'm trying to think in many other interpretations, is the scene where, and it reminded me actually of Halloween Kills, of when everyone's like, oh, Knock must be the vampire, we got to get him, and then it becomes the mob chasing him throughout the streets. And I just loved that it played on that theme of mass hysteria, because I feel like we see that a lot, not always in horror, but just in general. And to me, that would be very terrifying in 1922, is like the idea of a mob mentality. And I like that. I wonder, like, does Nosferatu purposefully sort of spell someone to be a scapegoat? Like, that's
Right.
not something I feel like we ever really look at in these interpretations. We always see it as he's doing his bidding and he's doing what the master needs. But in this version, I mean, if they had killed Knock and then everything had gotten better, they would have assumed that's who it was. And then Nosferatu could have gone on his way and kept living his undead life.
Right,
Um,
existing, yeah. Yeah, no,
yeah,
I
so
totally
I liked that. That stood out to me.
and I 100% agree. I made that same connection with Halloween Kills, with the hospital scene and them chasing the guy that looks nothing like Michael
Yeah.
Myers for whatever reason. I
And
mean, but it was
honestly,
the
the guy
master.
in Halloween Kills kind of looks like Knock.
Right,
So,
so I actually
yeah.
wondered, and I would love to see if there's any information about this, but I wonder if this movie inspired part of Halloween Kills, because, I mean, you can see very clearly,
Oh,
like, I
yeah.
mean, it had to have, I would think, to a certain extent. I mean, it could be a huge coincidence, I don't know, but
It would justify that in Halloween Kills and make me like it a little bit more, because
yeah.
that really ruined that movie for me, that particular choice.
Well,
So if it was a throwback to Nosferatu, well then, oh,
then it's a
yes.
little bit more high-minded
Of
and sort
course, a
of a
little
nod.
highbrow, and I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
The only thing about that, and I know we're getting off topic, but the only thing about that in Halloween Kills that I didn't like is just the way the guy looked and how the town should have known. I mean, Michael Myers was on the news. Like, you could see he was this huge dude and he was unmasked on the news, and this little guy was supposed to be him, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, no, I think there were, as you noted, a lot of really good themes kind of woven throughout this movie that were probably far ahead of its time in terms of
Yeah,
what you were seeing as people were starting to experiment with storytelling and film and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, and I think that the arc of the whole thing, kind of set the stage, as we mentioned earlier, for what we see in more modern horror, for those reasons, I think it works. But I think too, the silent nature gives it an air of sort of eeriness and creepiness that maybe wouldn't
yeah,
otherwise be the case in a more modern movie. Plus, I don't know if you knew this, but they're doing a remake of it this year,
I
Nosferatu.
did.
Did you
Yes, I
see
did know
that?
that. Yes, yes.
And I think
Which,
it's Robert Eggers, right, who's directing
yes.
it.
Yes, that's what I saw. But I don't know. I mean, whatever. They're going to remake everything in the world over and over again. And so I've just accepted that. But this is where, like, I get, like you just said, the eeriness is in the silence. And I think what made Nosferatu so famous was the shadow work and all the things that they did, because they didn't have modern technology. I am very worried that if you try to remake it, and I don't know what you're going to do, because you're either going to ruin it or you're going to make a different film.
Right.
Like, it's, and so then don't call it Nosferatu. Like that's where I feel like it'll probably go. Like we saw
Yeah.
with the third Black Christmas. It was such a reinterpretation. I don't even know that you could call it that. And I feel like this might be the case with this new
Well,
one.
did you see the cast for the new one?
At one point I did, but I can't remember it now.
So Count Orlok, who I guess is Dracula essentially, is played by Bill Skarsgård, who I think is a
Yes. Okay,
good
I
choice
did
for
remember
that.
seeing that.
Like
Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Willem Dafoe is in it. Nicholas Holt is Thomas Hutter. I don't know if you know Nicholas Holt, who that is. He was the
Yeah,
guy
he
from
was just
Renfield.
Renfield.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah, same guy.
Yeah,
So, I
yeah,
mean, I think it has a good cast, and I do like Robert Eggers as a director. But yes, like it's tough when you're remaking a classic, like the classic movie. Like what in terms of what that's gonna end up
yeah,
being. But I don't know.
and I've said before, I hate the remake of It, which is not that Bill Skarsgård had any part in like the like aesthetic, and he just played Pennywise, but I hate those remakes. So I hope that if when he plays Nosferatu, it stays more true to what we see in the original. I don't need it to be different. I don't want it to be different.
Yeah, I mean, the only remake that I can think of that I really, really, truly love would be The Thing. Maybe like the '80s version of The Thing because it was originally a '50s movie.
Yeah, I have not seen the 50s. I don't think I've seen the
I don't think I
50s,
have either. I
but I
can't
do love
imagine. I
the
mean,
80s. Yeah.
the '50s movie is supposed to be very good, but by all accounts, and I can't say this definitively because I haven't seen the '50s one. The '80s one is like superior in pretty much every
Yeah.
way. But like, I mean, I think it's a different type of movie too because of all the gore. I mean, that
Right.
was not part of probably the '50s version. I wouldn't imagine. So
Yeah. And that's what I hope they don't add to this new Nosferatu. Don't give it gore. It doesn't need gore. That's not what made it creepy when it
yeah,
first came out. And I think there's a potential to maintain that level of creep and eeriness with the shadows and the silence, but I don't know.
yeah, yeah. Before I forget, one other comedic bit, and it wasn't really comedic, but it was just a funny description. So like when Hutter wakes up and he's got the vampire bite on his, he's like, and he's writing the letter. Oh, two
The
mosquitoes bitten
mosquitoes are a
very closely
nuisance.
together on the neck. Like that
Well,
description.
and that's where we have to like separate out the fact that 102 years have passed, and in those 102 years, how many vampire stories have we been exposed to? So we're like, duh, are you kidding me? Like you got bit by a vampire. But in 1922, maybe they would not have made that connection so easily.
So before we kind of wind this down, this is totally a random question. What would you say is your favorite vampire movie of all time? Like just in
Twilight.
general.
Twilight.
Is it really?
No, I
I
do.
was
I
about
have
to
seen
say
all
Kim.
of those movies more than once, but and read the books. No, no. My favorite vampire movie. I do really like Let the Right One In.
Now. Are you talking the original?
So I think I saw the remake in the English version. I
Yeah,
cannot
like the
remember
American version.
honestly, but I do remember that whatever one I saw, I really liked it. Um, Honestly, I really liked Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah, that's a good choice. That's a really good. I love that movie. That's a good
Yeah,
one.
that was a movie I did not expect to like as much as I did, and I really liked it.
I think, man, Dust Till Dawn. I forgot. That's a really good one. For me, it's probably going to be either Interview with the Vampire, which I really did enjoy a good bit.
No, it's a good movie. I like that movie just fine.
Yeah.
It's just not my
Or
style, vampire.
right. Yeah, it's an interesting take on the whole thing. Or maybe, yeah, I think it was the Swedish version, whatever the original, the Let the Right One In is. That was really good, but also Bram Stoker's Dracula. I mean, I mentioned it a minute ago, but I really
Yeah.
like that a lot. But it's a very, I mean, I think it's Francis Ford Coppola that directed it, but it's a very like stylistic movie, which I don't know.
Yes, it
Some people
is.
really like that and don't like that. I don't know, but
And I will say that's not my jam. Like, I don't know. That's why I like I don't know. I have a vampire style I appreciate that is like more punk rock,
Lost
biker.
Boys. We were just talking about Lost
I
Boys. I mean,
know
that's
that, and that is like that would, yeah, that's, and you know what's interesting? Salem's Lot, I know is a horrible movie. I think I may have seen, I don't even know.
I've
I
never
know
seen it.
it's been described as one of the worst Stephen King movies that have been made from his books. But as far as his books are concerned, I Salem's Lot is the one I enjoyed reading the most. And
Nice.
I keep hearing little whispers of a potential remake. That is a movie I would like to see redone because I think it has the potential to be really good. I don't know why the one that was made before was so bad. I don't really want to find out. But I did like reading Salem's Lot. I thought that was a really nice vampire story.
Yeah. Nice. I need to read that. And I don't. When was the original movie released? I don't even know. Was that
I
like
don't
an
know because I'm pretty
'80s thing?
sure Rob Lowe is in it. I don't know. I
I'll have
don't
to look
know.
it up. Yeah.
One comment I was gonna say about Nosferatu, though,
Yeah,
was because there are a lot of moments that are comical or don't hit as they probably did in 1922 because of who we are today. But one moment that I thought for me stood out as being really strong, like shot wise, music wise, and I don't know, maybe someone would find it comical, is when he cuts his finger and Count Orlok's like, "Oh, precious blood." The music that comes on right there, that might be my favorite moment in the movie because I
yeah,
thought the music paired perfectly with what they wanted us to feel in that moment. I do feel like that moment could have happened later because then the next day he's all like, "Oh, a mosquito bit me." And it's like, dude, I you had a moment last night that was a little concerning. You let's stick with that. But
right.
I stylistically, I felt like that moment did a really nice job of like striking the horror tone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that was a good scene, and like you said earlier, I think the thing I most appreciated in the movie was the creativity with the camera work, given the limitations, and as you
Yeah,
mentioned, like the shadows, like the play of shadows. Like I totally appreciated that part of it.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, I would say if you're a horror fan, even though I know for a younger audience, as we were kind of talking about earlier, it might be tough to digest sort of the full kind of silent film approach. But I think if you're a horror fan, it's worth watching this at least one time, just to kind of
yeah,
say like
definitely.
I see the origins of this. I've got sort of that background. It's almost I don't know if I'd say an educational experience, but it is. It's kind of an educational
Yeah,
experience to watch it.
it is. And I think it is educational to see what people did before they had all the bells and whistles that we have today and how that can still be scary. Maybe not, we aren't scared of Nosferatu today, but I know that it scared people back then. And I do. And I mean, I watched it on YouTube. I did not buy the Blu-ray or anything like that. It's on YouTube, the whole movie. So it's
Yeah.
free. You can go watch it. And I do think it's worth it for
Yeah.
sure.
And actually, I'll link that in the description once this is edited and posted. That way people can watch it if they decide to watch it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, any final thoughts or observations about Nos or Nosferatu?
No snas.
No Nos.
Um, no snas. I don't think I do. Those were all kind of the main notes that I had. I do think that, I feel like one of the comments I've been making lately about films is that they're too layered. They try to do too much. And I think that's why I like Nosferatu more than other vampire interpretations because it was very pretty much innocent defeats evil. Like, that's all it takes, people. That's all we're trying to do here. And I appreciated that it had just that one sort of message. And I think everything tied into that and it was still very strong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think we well, it's not the same thing, but when we were reviewing Night Swim and we were talking about Jaws, like that, we were saying like that's one of the
Yeah.
simplicity of it is one of the. I mean, there were some layers there, no doubt, but like the simplicity of the
They
main
didn't
plot.
overtake. It was just shark killing people. We got to
Yeah,
stop it. Great. Awesome.
yeah,
Love it. Let's go. So, and that's where I think that strong writing adds layers to the characters. I'm making an observation here.
th-
It adds layers to the characters, not the story, because then you're
right.
trying to tell more than one story at once, and that's where things get convoluted.
That makes
That's my thought.
sense.
That's my
I
thought for the
agree.
day on writing.
Well, and I think that if a story gets too complicated or too layered, it's easy to lose sight of what the main arc should be
Yeah.
or is, and it just dilutes the effectiveness of it as a whole. So
Yeah.
yeah, cool. Okay. Well, what are we reviewing next or watching? Because the classic Universal movie monster movies.
So I have, let's see. I have this DVD that's got like these on there.
Oh, nice. Yeah, freaks. Yeah, hang on.
I love
I'm gonna grab the
freaks.
one. We'll compare notes. Let me see. Which ones do I have on the one that I've got, which I have not opened yet? This one's
Yeah,
got
this one is not opened either.
yes.
I've got
Okay,
this
so
so long
here's the
ago.
ones. This is what I have. It's like the Mummy,
Oh,
Creature from
Creature
the
from
Black
the Black
Lagoon,
Lagoon,
Phantom of
The
the
Invisible
Opera.
Man. I
So
love
yeah, I mean, we can any of these. Like, I don't whichever one we want to start with because we should have said this at the start of the video, but we're kind of going on like a classic
it.
monster movie. I don't know arc or journey here
Yes.
over the next little bit of time. I think so. Yeah, we'll pick one of these and
I would definitely like to do Creature from the Black Lagoon. That is a movie that I've been wanting to rewatch for a really long time.
Okay, perfect. So Creature
Okay.
from the Black Lagoon will be next, but I know Kim has like a ton of stuff happening in her life with like
It's
directing.
fine. It's okay.
Yeah, we'll
It's
figure
fine.
it out. We'll at some point in the next couple of weeks, we'll probably do this
Yeah.
review and it will be good.
Yes. We
Yeah,
will.
okay, cool. All right, Kim, anything else to close us out?
No. Blood is life.
But
Blood is
yeah,
life.
blood is life, precious blood.
Precious blood. Blood is life.
I'm gonna waddle around with a coffin, and maybe that'll be my Halloween costume. I'll dress
Just
like
yeah, just get
Nosferatu.
a coffin and hike it up, yeah,
Yeah,
and just walk around.
just walk around. It'll be perfect. I'll put a ball cap on. It'll be
And then I'll
great.
I'll be
Yeah,
I'll just do like tight curls in my hair. I just walk around going,
yeah. If we painted ourselves like kind of an amber color to match the tone of the film or something, like it would be total silent film. Yeah, it's
but I
perfect.
won't talk the whole night. It'd be the
Yeah,
best
that's we
Halloween
can carry
ever.
around title cards. It's a good idea. It'll be good.
Oh my god, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, I love this idea. Okay, we'll be back soon with Creature from the Black Lagoon. Thanks for watching, and yeah, that's it.